All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome to Edu Spotlight, which is proudly sponsored by Electricity. And today we have a very important person with us here. He's going to share a lot with us, his insight, experience, and what have you. Electricity is committed to highlighting people across the globe who are making lots of impact in their own fields. Name it. It could be in science, technology, law, business, and what have you. Today we have with us Lawyer Kenneth Appiah, and we would leave him to give us some more introduction of himself. But I hope this discussion is one that is going to cause more people to recognize the need for change and impact. Lawyer Kenneth Appiah, this we are very glad to have you today on Edu Spotlight. Audiences would want to listen to your story, but before that, we want to know who we are talking to. A short bio of yourself, anything you want us to know, whether it's the name of your cat or something, just feel free.
Thank you so much, Daniel. It's a pleasure to be on this episode. My name is Kenneth A. Appiah. I am a lawyer. Um, I graduated from the University of Ghana somewhere in 2018,
Mhm,
and then I proceeded to the Ghana School of Law, and afterwards I became a lawyer.
mhm,
I have worked with several organizations, including the Institute of Economic Affairs, IEA Ghana,
mhm.
ENS Africa Ghana, which is Africa's largest law firm.
Great.
Uh, I've also worked with other, institutions on an ad hoc basis.
Mhm.
I sit on the board of Start Young Africa. Start Young Africa is a non-profit organization which is focused on developing young people, assisting them to plan, to prioritize, and to set their purpose of life.
Great.
Uh, I also sit on the board of Excellencia Football Club, and what we do is to assist young people, kids, teach them football, develop them, and give them professional and marketable tendencies with the
Wow.
hope that if school does not work, or even in addition to school, one day they could leverage on their talent, which is football, to put food on their table. I've held other several leadership positions back at the University of Ghana. I was the president of the Law Students Union.
Mhm.
I'm also currently the president of my year group, Okukwari School Alumni, year group 2014.
Wow.
So,
All the
yeah.
Owarians. You have a big person here. Shout outs to all Owarians.
Yeah. So these are few bits about me. Practically, I love to cause change wherever I find myself.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that each and every one was created for a purpose, just like how everything God created was for a purpose. I believe that every human being is in this world for a purpose. And so
Mm.
it's incumbent upon you to identify your purpose and then do your best to fulfill same.
Mm.
So this is something small or short
Yeah.
about.
I'm so glad. And listening to you, I was just, soaking in every single thing. Like every line was almost like a punchline, I really I really enjoy this introduction, a powerful one indeed. And you mentioned something about people identifying their purpose. And I want to go on that tangent. So, what would you say has been your passion, which is connected to your purpose? And how does this passion connect with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals?
All right. So I strongly believe that there is a place for every single person in this world.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and under normal circumstances, nobody should be poor
Mm.
because God Himself did not create us to be poor.
Mm.
And so there is a place for every single person in this world, and especially for me as a Ghanaian, every Ghanaian, especially the youth, there is a point where if you leverage on either your talent, build on your education, um, focus on what you are doing, you could certainly make some money so that life does in itself does not become a burden for you. And also, if you take it from the government perspective, the government also has a role to play to ensure that people or its citizens do not remain poor. And I recognize the fact that one of the SDG is on poverty, no poverty. Um, and so I make sure that every single thing that I touch or do has an indirect connection or correlation with reducing poverty. Because I believe that if no matter what your purpose is, no matter why God brought you into this earth, if you are poor, you can't even satisfy yourself. How much do you then go on and make an impact in the lives of others? And so people, especially young people, not being poor, being able to put food on their table, afford a lifestyle that is deserving, is something that matters to me a lot. And I've made sure that every aspect of my life has a correlation to this important SDG.
Great, great. I like how you are able to connect the fact that people are not created poor in themselves. And for that matter, they have the agency to be able to accumulate wealth and to be able to, do what they want to do. And one thing you mentioned that I really had to think about is the fact that if you don't have the economic wherewithal, even if you want to contribute, it is going to be a limitation. So definitely, being able to afford your basic necessities is a great thing, and I'm glad you are able to connect it with the SGD. We are very curious to also find out how does this passion come about. I know you already mentioned that God did not create people poor, but there are several other SGDs. There are 17 of them, as a matter of fact. Why is it that this is the particular SGD that you settled on? Was it a childhood experience? Was it academic? Was it religious? Was it cultural? How has your experience shaped your appreciation of this particular SGD?
Okay, so I would summarize it in two aspects.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I come from a very humble home.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in a town in Kumasi called Achamaku, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
About 15 to 20 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
living around that time, that town, I realized at first hand how people struggled to make ends meet.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there were few cases, around that period who resorted to things that are not dignified, like stealing, smoking, and stuff like that. And when you dig deep down,
Mm-hmm.
you realize that poverty is one of the causes of the stuff that they were engaged in.
Mm-hmm.
I I dare say that around that period, if my parents had not moved from that area to a different area of the town,
Mm-hmm.
who knows, probably I would have unfortunately found myself even doing those things.
Mm-hmm.
So when I look back and seeing how these my friends suffered because their parents did not have money, it makes me feel that okay, if I have knowledge or if I could ever stand for something, then why don't I contribute my best to make sure that in my own way, poverty levels will reduce.
Mm-hmm.
Second thing is back at JHS,
Mm-hmm.
around at the time, they used to sack people for non-payment of school fees.
School fees. Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure about you, Daniel, but the school that
Yeah. It's
something that
real. I can relate. Yeah.
something that was happening, so much at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And one day, one of my friends was sacked from school,
Mm-hmm.
and when you are sacked at that time, you didn't have phone to call your parents, so you can only go back home and then come back to school the next day if your parents gave you the money.
Mm-hmm.
So upon reaching the roadside, he was knocked down by a car.
Oh.
Now, I recognize that this was through no fault of his,
Mm-hmm.
because at that time, around 13, 12, 14 years, you were not the one to pay your school fees.
Yeah.
But if I can put it this way, the parents' sins,
Hmm.
you, the fact that the parents were not able to pay his school fees,
Mm-hmm.
he had to bear the consequences of same. And
Hmm.
so when these two experiences has shaped how I think around reducing poverty levels and making sure that in my own way, people are able to do something that at least can put food on their table and make them live a dignified life. If you look
Hmm.
at the 1992 Constitution of Ghana,
Mm-hmm.
it it admonishes
Mm-hmm.
that as much as possible, the state should do everything to ensure that people live a dignified life.
Hmm.
And the United Nations SDG also has as one of them no poverty.
Hmm.
And so, and as a personal mission for me, people not being poor is something that matters a lot to me. So I would say that these two experiences really shaped how I think around these things, no poverty.
Very insightful, very insightful. Definitely, I'm not sure who else could have had this experience and want to pretend nothing had happened. Thank you so much for tying in that experience. And I know, and I know together with our listeners that whenever the next day you see Lawyer Ken doing something that has to do with no poverty, just know that he has been through the fire. Yeah, he knows what he's talking about. Okay. So we are also curious. Now we are building on from a point where you've been able to identify a passion which is rooted in your experiences. Now, how have you, in your own way, been able to channel this passion into problem solving? It could be anything that you have done in the past or what you are currently doing. Our audiences would want to know how you are either challenging stereotypes or you are empowering people to be more independent and break the cycle of poverty.
Okay, thank you so much. So, um, if you realize,
Mhm.
I mentioned from the beginning that everywhere I find myself and everything that I do is really geared towards ensuring that poverty levels are reduced,
Mhm.
especially young people, the youth. So, when I went to the Institute of Economic Affairs, for example,
Mhm.
I did several projects which had other importance, but
Mhm.
one of them was to assist in getting employment opportunities for young people.
Mm.
So one of the things, and it cuts across several areas, but the underlying rationale
Mhm.
was to create employment opportunities for young people and by so doing reduce poverty levels. I could give you examples. Um, One of them was business enabling projects that we did.
Okay.
Uh, Realized that if we could create employment opportunities in Ghana, the
Mhm.
private sector plays a key role.
Oh, okay.
At the time, the private sector was met with so many bottlenecks
Mm.
and obstacles that prevented their businesses from growing.
Mm.
So we decided to take on this project to identify some of these bottlenecks. And if we did, then we pushed the government to remove these barriers. A lot of profits will be realized by these private companies and in the end, hopefully, they could employ more unemployed graduates. So that was one project that we took up. The second one that I did was poor above, but rich beneath. What this means is that in Ghana, we have a lot of natural resources, gold, diamond, timber, just name it. And but some way, somehow, we've not been able to fully tap into these natural resources to alleviate poverty levels in the country. And so the project that I took back then was to find different ways of natural resource contracting. I argued at the time that the main module that the government was using in terms of natural resource contracting were archaic, and that if we did something that is more modern, we could realize a lot of money from our natural resources, which we have in abundance, to improve levels of poverty in Ghana. We made significant inroads in that. We met with the then Speaker of Parliament, Professor Michael Quay. I also had youth forums. I actually invited Professor Paul Collier, who is a professor at the University of Oxford, to come and give a talk on some of these things, so that with the hope that we could change the ways that we tap into our natural resources. And if the government has more money from natural resources, then employment opportunities could be created to create more jobs for the teeming unemployed youth, so that poverty levels should be reduced. One other area that I picked up was also education. I realized that in Ghana, most of the courses that we do today, or we offer today in our universities, are not able to create employment or direct employment opportunities for our young people. I will not mention any course in particular, but Daniel, is so true that most of the courses that we do today has no modern relevance. And the project that I took at the time was to identify how we could include more the technological programs, into the school curriculum, with the hope that if we included more of these technology, engineering programs and stuff that could create direct jobs for unemployed people, poverty levels will be reduced. So that was something that I took back then. Moving forward at ENS, I mentioned that I also worked there. I advised several local companies and multinational companies. And one of the main things that I did was to assist, represent foreign banks to give loans to Ghanaian companies. And I did this wholeheartedly because I knew that if Ghanaian companies could get loans at very affordable interest rates, it would have a direct impact in terms of their profit making, and by so doing, they could create more job opportunities for the unemployed youth. And other things that I've also done at SYA, I told you that I sit on the board of Start Young Africa, which is SYA. What we do is to visit schools and give them a message. Which message do we give? We help young ones between the ages of, say, 11 to 18 to prioritize, to choose very good careers. We advise them where possible. We give them guidance and mentorship. And I can say that for the past 8 years or so that we've been doing this, we've impacted more than 80,000 students across the country.
Impressive.
And one other thing that we do as sort of SYA is to periodically organize programs for young people in the universities, and we make sure that we tailor the message according to their needs.
Mm.
So the recent program that we had at KNUST,
Mm-hmm.
Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, what we did was to invite a seasoned entrepreneur who
Mm-hmm.
came there to talk to the students about um, how to become an entrepreneur, challenges that you face, and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And the impact was huge.
Mm.
And so through SYA2, that is something that I'm part of, and we are doing all with the hope of one day reducing poverty levels. The
Mm.
other one is Excellencia Football Club.
Mm-hmm.
Like I told you before, in terms of money making, there are different legitimate ways that could be explored.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody has the talent to play football,
Mm-hmm.
then in addition to the kid schooling, why don't we give the kid the platform to
Mm-hmm.
develop his football potential? And
Great.
so I manage this company. We have several footballers. We do programs where we give them a message of hope.
Mm-hmm.
We encourage them. Actually, one of the videos that I did, it was a program that we did for some of our
Mm-hmm.
footballers last year.
Mm-hmm.
It has reached almost 100,000 views on TikTok.
Mm.
And almost every day, I have my coaches and my public relation officer informing me how people are continually being blessed by that seminar that we did. And
Mm.
the crux of the message was to give hope to people who want to play football or have the passion to play football kids, but they feel
Mm.
that all hope is lost or that they could not harness their talent in Ghana. I
Mm.
was encouraging them and giving them practical ways that they could, ensure that they get something out of the football that they want to play. And so this is something that we are also doing. We have a camp, we have several equipment, we have coaches who train the kids, we give them all the professional training that they need so
Mm.
that one day if school does not work, through our vision to, give hope to kids through football,
Mm-hmm.
we could create a lot of employment opportunities for them.
I'm listening quietly because it's really thought-provoking. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So these are some of the things that I've done and I'm still doing to
Mm-hmm.
ensure that some way, somehow, the SDG of no poverty is realized in Ghana, in my country, because I'm a Ghanaian, and if I want to ensure that poverty levels are reduced, which better place to start from than my own country?
That's impressive. Honestly, you touch on a lot of things, and I understand that all of these things you touch on people who may be either collaborating with you or maybe outside of your team may have their own interests. And this brings into the discussion the idea of competing interests. And that is where challenges start coming from because you may be looking at things from one direction. You know how if we do A, B, C, and D, it can get us to this place. But then you still have other people around, or maybe it might be self which may sort of bring some sort of barriers or challenges in the process. We're going to let you talk about how these challenges came about, what kinds of challenges, because listening to you, you have dealt with government, you have dealt with decision makers, you have dealt with all kinds of people, and these people are coming in with their own ideas. So, what kind of challenges must have come up, and how did you brace these challenges to be able to still work out your way into realizing the no poverty?
Sure. Thank you so much, Daniel. In terms of challenges, there were lots of challenges that I faced and still facing. Challenge that I identified. This one was not me personally, but with the people that we speak to, we try to give them the message of hope, the strategies to come out from poverty, to make the best out of their lives. especially those in remote areas, was a lack of belief in themselves.
Mm.
Because you're standing in front of them, giving them practical ways where they could make something out of their life. But the person is only looking at what is around him or her and probably thinking that these people, they don't know what they are saying. I don't
Mm.
even get food to eat today. And you are
Mm.
here telling me I could be this, I could be that, you know.
Mm.
So the lack of belief among people is the people that we speak to, especially those in remote areas,
Mhm.
you know, one of the main challenges that
Sorry to
we
cut you, but as you talk about the lack of belief, it brings to mind this idea of, people, it's quite controversial though, but people oftentimes say that poverty, first of all, is mental. So the person is able, if the person is able to realign their thoughts and think about how to break out of the poverty cycle, they can really become rich or they can break beyond boundaries. Is that always the case that poverty is mental or there's much to it?
Yes, Daniel, I don't want to take a side with this phenomenon, but I argue both ways.
Mm-hmm.
I think that sometimes people break out of poverty not because they plan to or they prepare their minds for it, but it's just the circumstances of life that catapulted them out of poverty.
Mm,
Some people to especially plan, they devise ways and means of, taking themselves out of poverty. And
mm,
lo and behold, their plan comes into fruition
mm-hmm,
and they are able to come out of poverty.
mm.
So I think it's a two-way side to this, and I would not want to pick sides.
Big size, yeah. I think about it because you mentioned when the society is rich beneath but poor above. So you realize a picture of a people living in abundance, like anything that could make them prosper, but it is not happening. So you start to question what is really happening.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. And one of the challenges that I also face, Daniel, it's a bit personal. It's
Mm-hmm,
in respect of, um, at a point I had to make a lot of sacrifices.
mm-hmm,
And the last sacrifice that I made was giving up my my work at a prestigious law firm
mm,
just to make enough time for these impactful projects that I'm doing. Because what is life if you only came to fit in but not make impact in the lives of others, not fulfill your purpose,
mm-hmm,
and not make meaning out of life? And what I deem as making meaning out of life is when somebody is blessed by you, somebody who will not be able to pay you back is
mm,
blessed by what you
mm,
are doing or your knowledge. And
mm.
so I had to make some personal sacrifices here and there to make sure that these goals are achieved. But hey, it's something that I'm proud of. I am happy that I took some sacrifices along the line, some of which were very challenging because there are a lot of competing interests,
Mm.
money, your family, your key friends, and even your key parents. And it's sometimes it becomes very frustrating that you are pushing for something and you are not really getting people to understand you why you are doing this or why you are doing that.
Yes.
The vision is for you, the purpose, you realize it as something that God gave you, and so you just have to keep press on and then make sure that in the end you achieve your goal. So these were some of the challenges that I say I've faced over the period, and I'm still facing, especially with the I don't know if I mentioned it, but lack of financing for
Mhm.
the projects that we do because it's a typical NGO. Sometimes you want to make a lot of impact, but the financing becomes a bit difficult, and you
Mm,
have to use personal funds sometimes together with other persons on the board. But
mm.
It's a good thing that we are doing. We are not going to give up because people need the message. We need to change the minds of people to take them out of poverty, and we are not going to give up on that message.
Wow, that's a great way to, come up with your challenges that you faced so far and how you were able to also breeze it. We are curious. Now we live in a time where a lot of young people don't know what to do with their lives. They may be wondering, what is the next step? Can I really, achieve something? What is your conception of an ideal world? Do you think we are going to actually achieve the no poverty goal? Is it something that is attainable or is overly ambitious? What is your goal? And what do you also have to tell change makers who, like you, are dreaming of making change as far as the no poverty goal is concerned?
Okay, thank you so much, Daniel. So I think that in terms of the SDG goal of no poverty, um, I think it was designed for practically governments
Mm-hmm.
to do everything that they can to alleviate poverty.
Mm-hmm.
But across the world, it's really relative because every country has its focus
Mm-hmm.
and what it wants to do within a certain period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in terms of the governmental level, it may be difficult for the no poverty level to be achieved, say, by 2030.
Mm-hmm.
But personally, I believe that every individual could do something that could at least put food on the person's table and make the person live a dignified life.
Mm.
Sometimes we tend to give excuses too much as to why certain things are not going our way. But if you do a bit of introspection, you
Mm-hmm.
realize that the fault is really yours, but you are
Mm.
just shifting blame. So, in terms of the governmental level, I don't believe that governments or countries across the world would achieve the no poverty level
Mm-hmm.
at the set time for the SDG. But on a personal, individual level, I think that we could get there. It's really about every person being given the strategy, being given the know-how, being given the confidence and the right systems to ensure that the person comes out of poverty. And
Mm.
so, yes, that is the answer that I would give. That we can get there, but I don't believe that we will achieve a universal no poverty levels.
Wow, this is very interesting. How you are able to, tackle this because it's quite controversial. People oftentimes say that the UN Sustainable Development Goals in themselves are unrealistic to a point, especially climate change. People have lots of different kinds of debates. So it's very good you bring up this perspective, and I'm also curious because in your previous discussion or earlier you mentioned that you posted something about Excellencia, and apparently what you posted had garnered a lot of views on TikTok. Have you found other ways of trying to share your experience? It could be writing, it could be, any way to be able to make it available to the public in your own
Yes,
small way.
yes. So I try to use social media to give the message of hope. If
Mm-hmm.
you visit my Facebook wall, for example, most often I write a lot on various thematic areas which are all centered around reducing poverty in the long
Mm-hmm.
run.
Mm-hmm.
And then most often too, when I'm invited for programs, bloggers actually summarize what I did. They do a short video and then they post it around and all of that. And one other project that I'm doing is writing a book.
Wow,
And
impressive.
yeah,
Honestly, I think the first copy is coming to electricity.
first copies.
Copies, yeah, I failed to
I'll
pluralize
be,
it.
I'll be very glad to give copies to electricity, because I believe so much in what you are doing. And I strongly believe that if people got copies of this book, it may probably be released either later this year or next year. I strongly believe that it could go a long way to reduce poverty. Why do I say that? One of the chapters or two in the book, I talk about, how young people would make money, how young people would make meaning out of life. And I touch on several areas. One of them is networking, using the power of networking to make something out of life. And I give the various strategies and systems that could be used. I also talk about the school problem. And in respect of the school problem, I argue that most people think that the only way to make something out of life is by doing something in line with what you studied in school. Statistics are clear, Daniel, that in fact, most people who are rich are school dropouts.
I probably may have to consider dropping out of school.
No. I wouldn't advise anybody to drop out of school, but the point made that, as the author said in the book Psychology of Money, the thinking that one can only make a meaning out of life based on what the person said is wrong. And we need to have a rethink about it, because most young people are there and they're only looking for employment opportunities that are in line with what they studied. What if you deviate for a little while? Because most often, when you even deviate, you realize that you're actually in love with your newly found area than what you probably studied in school.
Yes.
But most of the things that I do, Daniel, apart from law and maybe a bit of policy, most of the things that I do, I never studied them in school. But I took it upon myself and I learned on the ground. And so somebody could actually also do same. Another thing that I talk about is leveraging on talent and skills. If you have any skill that you believe will be developed and you can make money out of it, you should really take it up. It could be anything from masonry, carpentry, acting, singing, whatever it is, poetry writing, anything, or leveraging on talent. You could play football, basketball, whatever it is. It's all a matter of deciding to go fully into it, looking for ways to make it happen, and then being more focused and disciplined about it. Then the other way is digital, means. Today, the world, we are in a fast-changing world, and there are many things that you could do if you decide to go a bit digital, coding, video editing, and stuff like that. You could make a whole lot of money out of it. In actual fact, Daniel, people who are into coding and these digital skills related stuff actually earn more than lawyers and doctors and whatnot.
You're
But
right.
somebody will be sitting there saying, "I don't have any job," and but for the person, if the person could study something related to digitalization, the person could make a lot of money. So in my book, I try to give various means and ways that young people especially could adopt to make sure that they make meaning out of life. Because like I told you from the beginning, I believe that we are all on this earth for a purpose. God created every single person for a purpose. And the only way you can even focus on realizing and fulfilling your purpose is when one of the ways is when you don't struggle for food. And so I believe that, if young people, especially who are really my focus, who adopt any of these strategies that, I list in my book, and I've tried to give some of them here, you could go a long way to reduce poverty levels.
Wow, thank you very much for that insightful submission. As I was listening to you, I felt like I had booked a financial education session already.
In
Yeah.
fact, there's a column in the book that I also try to give a bit of financial education, because once you start earning some money too.
Mm-hmm.
Then the question is, how do you make sure that it sustains you for a long while?
Yeah.
Necessary spending, trying to separate needs from wants,
Mm-hmm.
saving and investing culture. There's a whole lot of nuggets that I share around that. I actually also talk about the purpose of money, which is that money is also supposed to make you form certain habits of
Mm.
patience, persistence, discipline, being focused, and all of that. So I will surely give electricity copies of the book when it comes out, and I pray
Yeah.
that it the
Yeah.
needed impact that I want.
Our arms are wide open for that. So we really really appreciate your submissions, and also we assume that you may have heard about electricity. You may have, in one way or the other, interacted with electricity. We want to pick your thoughts. So, what do you think? As electricity advances its mission of using education to advance the UN Sustainable Development Goals, some of the things that it could do in line with no poverty so that the goal can be achieved.
All right, thank you so much, Daniel. I think electricity is relatively young.
Mm-hmm.
We are in the foundational stages, but I still believe that we could do a lot more
Mm-hmm.
to reduce poverty levels. And one of the ways that we could go about it is community outreaches.
Mm-hmm.
Daniel, I tell you what, there are many people, especially in remote areas, who need help to break out of their shells.
Mm.
And I actually link this to, you know, HIV disease like HIV AIDS
Mm-hmm.
and other vices, smoking, robbery, alcoholism, and all of that. There are people in remote areas who need some of these messages. And I believe that if electricity could do more of community outreaches, it could be schools, it could be having a center in each district where we give this message, it could go a long way. One
Mm.
other thing I think we can do is mentorship and guidance.
Mm-hmm.
And there are many young people who are so confused. Which career do I choose next? What do I do? Recently, a lady called me, um, lady that I actually don't know. She called me and her problem was that she's gotten a job in the banking sector, but she also wants to read law. And at the
Mm.
same time, she's interested in international politics. So what does
Mm-hmm.
she do? Daniel, there are many young people who, are torn between a lot of things. And if care is not taken, they may decide wrongly and
Mm.
it will put them on the poverty road.
Mm-hmm.
And so I believe that if electricity could have some form of mentorship and guidance for,
Mm-hmm.
these young people, we just have to be the link for them between
Mm.
people who have seen it all
Mm-hmm.
and those who are now coming.
Mm.
And I believe that if we did that, it could go a long way to achieve the impact that we want to see. Another thing is through using social media.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that we have YouTube page and probably other one or two media pages
Yeah,
that
LinkedIn, Facebook.
yes, we could bring people with experience, people with expertise in various thematic areas like entrepreneurship, TV writing, corporate etiquette, career guidance, interviewing skills, farming. It could be anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then, we bring people who have the expertise to just give, even if it's a 45 minutes lecture, it's okay.
Mm.
Then we just share it across, give the link across, then people could watch. And by so doing, we can make the impact that we want to see. So these are some of the practical ways that I believe if electricity could adopt could go a long way to help us achieve the SDG goal of no poverty.
Mm, Thank you so much for that submission. We really, really appreciate that, counsel. So, viewers, this is where we draw down the curtains on Edu Spotlight with lawyer Kenneth Appiah. He's been very impactful in his own area, in his own circle. He's doing a lot of things for himself, for God, for country, and more importantly, to advance the UN Sustainable Development Goal that focuses on no poverty. Thank you so much for making time, Lawyer Ken, to have this encounter, and we know that this is definitely going to not going to be the last time that we are engaging with you. We'll constantly keep in touch and make sure that more and more people get to benefit from your wealth of knowledge and experience.
It's a,
Viewers,
it's a pleasure, Daniel.
mhm,
I I don't know who may watch this or who may read reports from this episode of the show, but I just want to say to end that the only person who does not have hope in this world is the one who is dead.
mm,
Once there is life, there is hope. Don't look at your circumstances and feel that you cannot make something out of life. There
mm,
are stories of people who were in worse scenarios, but they came out, successfully. And
mm.
so I don't know where this might get to, but I just want to encourage every single person, especially young people who are struggling to make ends meet, who are poor, who are finding ways to make it out of life, that do not give up, because once there is life, there is always hope, Daniel.
Once there is life, there is always hope. So if you are tuning in, this is what Lawyer Ken is leaving us with. And I want us to think about this, ponder over it, and it's a powerful message that has a ripple effect, positive effect in our lives. Viewers, this is where we draw down the curtains on Edu Spotlight. We will come your way again next time, and until then, have a great time. Bye, everyone.
Bye.